Hey guys, well, I think people are going to keep rolling in, but we have quite a few here, and we want to make sure we get to everybody's questions in the hour or so that we have. So we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jenna Nilo. I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach for Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. Thank you for joining our webinar Wednesday webinar today, a little bit earlier than normal, but love to see you all here. We do host webinars every Wednesday at 4 o'clock p.m. So anytime you join us for any of them, we have a section where we call those. So definitely take a look and see what other things we have throughout the upcoming weeks that will help you guys out with this and beyond the quarantine. So definitely, oh, I'm hearing my sound is not clear.
It's just a little pixelated, yes. A little bit.
Oh, and see, I'm hearing you pixelated, huh? That's strange. Just a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to actually turn it over, so hopefully others with better sound will be better off. So please keep yourself muted and your video off throughout the presentation. We will have instances where we're going to be asking for interaction, definitely always through the chat. So please take a look at the chat window and ask questions, things like that there. And we will be monitoring that, interrupting when appropriate, getting those questions out there and getting those questions answered. So definitely interact with that. And if you stick around for the entire time, at the end of the webinar, we are going to be putting in that same chat window a link to earn your PDHs for your time today. So if you're looking for PDHs, definitely take a look. The link will take you to a form that you fill out. We go back and forth and have proof of your attendance, and we'll get to that. So definitely stick around to the end for that. And that's about it. I don't want to take up too much of our time. So just today we are doing a webinar on ideas for helping educators during home learning. So we have both Rushton, Hurley, and our own Lindsay Zilly here to help you guys out and present today. So go ahead and Lindsay, I'm going to turn things over to you since I'm kind of pixelated, and we'll go from there. So thanks so much.
All right, Rushton, beep. If it does get too pixelated for you, just leave a comment in the chat and I will turn my video off and hope it would help. But my name is Lindsay Zilly and I'm the Director of Professional Learning for Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. My contact information is on the bottom of this slide, so please don't hesitate to reach out via email or social media. This is my why right here. I have 4 kids, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And wait, go back one. Okay, so this is the picture perfect version of my life, right? So this is what I put on social media. This is what everybody thinks life is all about. They're smiling, they're looking the same direction. Oh my gosh, they've got clean clothes on. Who would have thought? And so they're also my guinea pigs for all of my activities that I do. So as a working mom, I have to juggle now working from home and then dealing with the instructional practices for these 4. So now you can go to the next slide. So that's social media, right? This is actually a really accurate reflection of their real personalities. So if you take a look at their faces, not so perfect anymore. I have to navigate through all of these emotions. Luckily, my littlest one is super happy and easygoing. My oldest is a perfectionist, kind of like myself. My second oldest son is just all over the place. You know, he's like squirrel, any given moment. And my second youngest has so many emotions, he doesn't know what to do with them. So you can go to the next one, Rushton. I had this big idea yesterday. I'm like, I'm going to create an obstacle course for them. And so while they were eating lunch, I set up this entire obstacle course. And I'm like, way to go, mom score. I outlined all of the rules for them. And then we waited for the baby to take a nap because, you know, that's important. And so I was like, all right, guys, let's go have some fun. And they loved it. They're like, this is incredible. For 2 minutes. It took me so much time to set this whole thing up. And really, it was only something that could entertain them for 2 or 3 minutes. About that much time in, they were arguing and fighting, and it just wasn't working. So my point is, in these moments that you're home with your own learners, or you're trying to support people that are home with their own learners, you don't have to have this big, intense idea where you rearrange the furniture and you set everything up perfectly, because at the end of the day, it might not end up perfect. And that's okay. We as instructional coaches and administrators and teachers and parents have to give ourselves permission to try something and fail forward with it. So maybe this didn't work. Now I need to think from the perspective of my kids and my learners and plan something that would actually be meaningful for them. This wasn't it. But we don't want you to have to go. So you can go to the next slide. We have started to create a calendar of activities for everyone that is working at home, be you teacher, coach, administrator, parent. And we think simpler is better. It's too difficult to try to recreate the whole school day. We can't do it. So instead, we've given some tried and true activities, both tech related and unplugged, because we know that not everybody has the same access.
Yeah.
So in this case, the calendar that's embedded here will lead you to some social emotional learning activities, as well as activities aligned to the 4 C's. And we really want to encourage you to try and do that with your learners and with your staff if you're working with educators. Align it to something simple. So instead of trying to do math, reading, science, social studies, all of those, think about, okay, we're going to do the 4 C's today, which is creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. How can you build off of teachable moments that are already occurring in the homes of your learners that won't include this huge obstacle course that takes up more time than it's worth? You could also build it off the idea of STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. But keep it simple, because your kids don't need that recreated classroom experience. You can go to the next slide. I know this is a new time for everyone. We're trying to figure out and navigate the best way we can. And so what I've done is created these 2 infographics for anybody that has been impacted by these school closures. I've linked them in here and we'll also share them with you after. But it's just some advice on where to begin. So don't forget your why. Why are you teaching this to your student right now? If it doesn't have a fit for their long-term academic health, then maybe try something different. It should be focused on a learning target, not necessarily a tech tool or a worksheet in a packet. I was talking with my cousin yesterday and she said, this homework is killing me. And I said, that's not the point. The point is for teachers to create supplemental material for the parent that's working from home now and doesn't know where to begin. We shouldn't feel this pressure that we have to do every single thing. In addition, don't focus on too many new things. A couple of the questions that we received ahead of time asked, what's the best tool to communicate with our parents? Well, that really depends on what you've been using so far. So if you've used something like Seesaw, I'd continue utilizing that. That's a great technology tool, but if they've never been on it before, it's not going to be worth the headaches between you and the parents to start it up remotely. Things like Google Classroom are great. Flipgrids are great. But at the end of the day, if it hasn't been implemented at school in person, chances are it's not going to be successful outside of school. So you might want to just stick to good old email, or if you have a Facebook group that your parents follow for the school or any kind of social media account, posting it that way is a great alternative too. So don't try and incorporate too much new as you start to plan for these remote learning experiences. Some other questions that I have here are, there seems to be so many free tech tools. You're totally right. Overwhelming. That's why we've tried to create our website, pare down all of the tools that are out there, and just give you easy activities for your learner, regardless of their accessibility. It's definitely overwhelming. We totally understand that. And I think it's important that we utilize our coaches at this time to help kind of sift through all of that technology content. So if your district has instructional of any kind, it's a great idea to have them curate some top 3 lists or top 5 lists. These tools are worth it. Here's an activity to go with it and why. It's important to always include that why, because you want to make sure that people are understanding the purpose in the learning, not just that it's an excuse to use another tech tool. Another question was, is there a tool online where I can write notes and record myself? Again, there's tons of tools like this, but if your students have never used it before, you want to be careful. Judge it based on the dynamics of your class. If you're teaching high school, then it might be easier to use a Screencastify or an Edpuzzle, and those learners can kind of figure it out. But if you're working with littles, it might be more challenging than it's worth. You might just want to post a video in Seesaw or even create your own private YouTube channel and share that link out so people can just see your face and hear your voice. I really love that Flipgrid allows for the teachers to reach out to their students and also the students to reach back out. I think it's really important during this time that we still see each other's faces and hear each other's voices. And sometimes it's so comforting for a student to just see that their teacher is thinking about them. Especially like with my young ones, they can't read. So if they're seeing the written messages, that's one thing to hear it from me. But if they hear that their teacher from their own voice is thinking about them, that really does help. What if many of your students don't have internet access or computers or tablets at home to work on? Again, build off of those teachable moments. There's tons of unplugged social emotional activities on our website that we're curating and kind of filtering out for you for those specific students. You can also turn to places like Comcast and Xfinity. They're running some free promotions right now for people that are impacted with this, if it's something that you're really concerned about. But there is no harm in students doing unplugged activities at home right now. Capitalizing on those teachable moments. For example, if mom's making a recipe in the kitchen, how would we double this? Or if dad has a business meeting and he has to wear a tie, how do you tie a tie? So little things like that that are life skills that you can build off of at any given opportunity throughout the day. If students don't have devices at home, what are people sending as activities, specifically STEM and STEAM? I just saw a really great activity bundle. It was at bit.ly free maker stations, and I'll make sure I put that in the chat later. 3 weeks worth of unplugged STEAM maker challenges. So I would suggest grab something from somebody you respect and you know does quality work and model your learning off of theirs. So not necessarily utilizing their resources because they built it based on their population, but use it as kind of a framework to structure what would work well with your learners. Then finally, what do administrators need to do to support their teachers? I think give them permission to not have to do 100%. Try and get 1 or 2 activities out to your families, but you don't have to recreate the schedule. In addition, if you're not following Tony Sanders from U46 on Twitter, you should. He's an administrator, a superintendent that is posting Tony's lessons every day. So while he doesn't have to directly give lesson plans out, he's saying, this is what Tony's doing today. And so he's not only doing the activities that he's assigning, but he's sharing it with the world so they can see what is reasonable for you to get done at this time. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I wanted to be sure that I gave you my perspective as a professional learning coordinator, also as a mom of 4 that knows there is no perfect and we're all in this together. I'll put the resources that I mentioned in the chat so that you can grab those. But I'd love to hand it over to Rushton. And if you have any other questions while either one of us is talking, please go ahead and feel free to ask those in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to them. All right, Rushton, take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay. It is so cool to get some time with Illinois educators. I've been to several conferences back when it was called ICE and met so many cool folks, and it is wonderful to have the chance to talk to you again. Just as before, I'm still in that space where I welcome thoughts, right? You know, anything that I'm presenting where you think, you know, you could do that better. Let me know. Let me know. None of us is so good at what we do that there's no room for improvement, right? So feel free to offer suggestions and help me get better at sharing these kinds of ideas at a time when it's really, really important for people. So a little bit about me. The idea for me is to draw upon a lot of different experiences that I've had in trying to help you with the situation that we're facing at the moment. So to start with, I am a former high school teacher. I taught Japanese language for years. It was something I loved doing. Our kids kind of came to the class with, not because they were already way ahead of everything else and were on their way to MIT, but just because they liked animated movies. So all good. I moved to Texas in '01, became principal of a K-12 school, and then a principal of an online high school. And it was very different, of course, back then, what was available online. And the conversations that we had about what we could do for our students proved to be some of the most intellectually interesting of my life, really. The kinds of work that we got to do together to make things work for those kids who were in our program. A lot of kids who were the breadwinners in their family or suffering from medical issues or had their own children or taking care of their parents. I mean, it was a really interesting environment on that. Hajime Masde to you too as well. Very nice from DCISKE. Thank you. Now I'm a nonprofit guy and I run a little shindig called nextvista.org. Lindsay, if you want to toss that in there, that would make you a rock star. So nextvista.org is a library of videos by and for teachers and students everywhere. It's free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from. It's all for a student audience, all screened content. My own little attempt to save the world from ignorance, one creative video at a time. Thank you very much. Now, there are things I'm thankful for, right? So you see me and my wife over there on the right. We love to travel. Not doing it now, obviously, but we also love to come home to our cats, right? So you see Lola on the left and Luna in the middle. And we're both in education. We both do everything we can for kids. We come home at the end of the day and it's just cats and us, and it's all right, just saying. So anyway, there are these different things that make us who we are. I spend a ton of time working with schools around the world. So helping train teachers, working with school leaders on text possibilities for schools, PD, staff morale, school improvement, change strategies, fostering and sharing strengths, these kinds of things. And there are certain schools that I spend a lot of time at. One of them is this one, Sarah High School, a Catholic boys high school in San Mateo, California. And early in February, when friends of mine at international schools in China began to say, wow, we're having to suddenly switch to online learning, I thought, ooh, that's interesting. And then a couple of weeks later, Japan shut down all its schools, and it was like, and so the principal and the president and I looked at each other and said, let's get into high gear. So that started the very next week. We started getting people up to speed on the 2 tools we wanted them to make sure they had, because we too were thinking along the lines of don't overwhelm people with a bunch of new things. So we just wanted to make sure that people could do video conferencing. So we chose Zoom for that, and could do screencasting and chose Screencastify for that. We can talk more about that as we go, but the idea was just to get people up to speed on that. That Thursday, we had a full day in service where it was supposed to be about something else, and it turned out to be a day of just working on online learning possibilities. The Friday was a big thing in the Archdiocese, and we were going to jump into a bunch of things the following week. And that Sunday night, we learned that one of our students' family members, I should say, had tested positive, and that we were shutting the school down for 3 days to do a deep cleaning. So everybody was like, all right, well, we can try a couple of things out during these 3 days. Well, on the second day of that, the Archdiocese said that every school would be shutting down for 2.5 weeks. And we thought, oh, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And then the health department in our region said, okay, we're moving to shelter in residence, and everybody's staying home. So now we're in shelter in residence. Just a couple of days ago, the governor said we may not go back to school the rest of the school year. So what has happened in other places is happening with us and may happen with you as well. And the idea, of course, is just to be as prepared as possible. I ended up creating a guide about how to prepare staff for a switch. I'll make sure that we get that into the chat before we finish today. If after my section on this, I haven't added it in, just let me know and we will get that in there. In doing this though, I was getting a lot of notes about, well, what do we need? What you know, we need to be able to talk about X or Y or Z. So we ended up starting webinars, right? And so there are webinars that that you can see. You know, in addition to the one that we're doing now, I'll be doing another one later today on activities across grade levels for digital learning. I've got one on guidance from last week that you can get to as well. I recognize that the situation in Illinois is a little more complex, right? You know, there's the exact definition of what constitutes an e-learning day, but identifying what you can do now that campuses have closed is certainly prudent. So that will be good for whenever you happen to make your way into online instruction. So feel free, once you get these slides, if we share those out or via the pieces that we put out, to take a look at that, and hopefully it's helpful to you. As a core element, understand that there are certain things that haven't changed, right? You know, we don't know how long this highly transmissible virus will be a threat. So thinking about possible long-term strategies is certainly a good idea. But three things above all others: you know, we care for our students, we care for their learning, and in order to do both of those things, we care for ourselves. You, just like the students, you too will need breaks from screen time. You'll need to get plenty of rest. You'll need to exercise however you can. And to keep yourselves as sharp as possible, because we're in an unusual situation and we just need to be there so as to be there for our students. Now, several things that you should keep in mind as we think about what kinds of things have shifted when we've gone from in-person to online. First of all, when teaching online, you are highly unlikely to be able to keep anything close to the same pace you would in a face-to-face setting, like Lindsay mentioned before, right? Especially given that you're comfortable in a physical classroom and probably new to online instruction. Therefore, simplify. What are the key pieces? Focus on those. Use what you're already familiar with. Minimize new tools you're bringing to what you do, at least at the start. If what you know is email and how to create a Google Doc, use the living daylights out of that, and that's your best point of departure. Each school and student group will need something different. So different grade levels require different approaches. Working with support folks for special needs and EL populations will be tricky as you try and plan time effectively. You're going to need to be creative as you go. And there's no one size fits all. So you're a part of a process that is a creative exploratory process now. What works for your students? Ask their opinions on things like, how does this work for you? How could we make it better for your learning? They will come up with ideas that are useful for you. Like when you teach in a physical classroom, adding variety to what you present and what your students see significantly helps them to master what you cover. So they'll need time away from computer screens, and those moments can be strong components of your lessons. Students will need to connect with you and each other, just like Lindsay was talking about, right? They need to see the faces, right? Here we are here and under shelter in place, and we're only supposed to leave for essential errands, right? So this is not summer vacation. Your students will need to see and hear from adults they trust. And for some, just remember, you know, under normal circumstances, you may be the first adult who smiles at them each day. And if you can use video conferencing tools properly, screencast to just send short messages out to people, you will be keeping that going in ways that are important to them. Your colleagues are your safety net. Now, this is going to be a stressful time. It probably already is for you, all right? And the more you get into a communicative mode of creative brainstorming and being comfortable trying things and making adjustments, the better off you'll all be. But tap the talents of your colleagues. Talk about ideas, what's working, what's not working. And let's take a moment to just talk about the idea of equity, right? Now, equity is an idea for which people have a lot of different opinions. I will say this, I have encountered people out here who said, you know, the equitable thing to do while we're shut down is to stop teaching because some of our students don't have access. They don't have a computer, they don't have access to the internet. It wouldn't be fair to them to keep everything else going. Well, that is a vision of equity that stops at the borders of your school or your district. And I would encourage you to think in terms of whatever you decide for your students. If it involves slowing down or stopping, you're putting those kids at a disadvantage compared to all of those districts where they are going to the trouble of figuring out what they can do to keep the learning going. So when you think about these ideas, I hope you'll stop and say, you know, even for the kids that don't have access, maybe we can get them equipment. Maybe we can get them hotspots. If you can't, maybe we can come up with meaningful things to send home rather than worksheets that don't move them forward with their mastery of content that you teach. There are good worksheets, but have those conversations. They're difficult conversations and worth having in order to make sure that you are doing the very best you can for all your students, and not leaving them behind compared to what's happening with others. Also know that there are other resources out there. Your PBS station may be really coming through at this time. KQED here in San Francisco is loading up on educational content through the day. And that's a huge help to places where the schools and the districts have stepped away from trying to keep instruction going. So when you think of equity, consider how far students doing nothing will fall behind those where things may be happening, right? Equity is important. Equity is important for us to think about in terms of we should be doing everything we can to bring everything we can to our students. So there are 4 really important things that you can do right now, all right? And one of those is to make sure that with your instructions, your assignments, your messages, right, all of these things are easily accessible and easily understood by your students and families. Know, for example, that when you have younger students, you're probably relying on somebody at the house to help them out, right? So a parent, a grandparent, it could be an older sibling, right? There are any number of scenarios where it's a single parent household. That single parent is actually still going to work, and a 5th grader is the one in charge of helping the 1st grader with his or her learning. So if that's the case, your messages have to be easily understood. There are good things you can do along these lines, right? Well, first of all, some obvious pieces. If you're already using, say, Google Classroom or Seesaw, Schoology, another LMS, whatever it might be, that's great. These are systems designed to connect, remind, and focus students. If you have no system like this, then work to get a space online where you can point people. If you have a Google account of any kind, create a single doc where you can post links and instructions, and that'll be a huge help. You can help people get there by creating a shortcut using a service like tinyurl.com and perhaps embedding the link in a text in an email. There are ways to get these things in front of people. Just make sure you are doing what you can to make that as easy as possible. I would suggest that you get in touch with 1 or 2 of your parents who can be your test cases if you're not sure. Send things to them and say, does this make sense? Is this easy to understand? And then that way, with their help, you might be able to avoid losing a lot of time to 24 emails saying, I don't get this, blah, 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 blah. Learn to screencast. Now, first of all, what screencasts are, because sometimes people say, oh, yeah, we cast. We send that to the projector via blah, blah, blah. That's casting. It's not screencasting. So screencasting is a video where what is on the computer screen is the visual, and there is a narration as the audio. Now, in putting something together like that, you can do all kinds of things very quickly. A friendly message, deliver a prompt, explain something, or issue a fun challenge. Dr. Stephen McGriff, formerly of San Jose State University and the professor in residence at the Krause Center for Innovation, and now with Divergent Ed Consultants, calls screencasting the workhorse of online instruction. I'm a fan of Screencastify. It's relatively easy, right? Allows you to pop what you make in Google Classroom. You can use the copy link feature to get the link out via an email or blog. Now, it is an extension to Chrome, so you'll need a Google account to set it up. If you want something different, though, there is Screencast-O-Matic as a download, or Mac people, you can use QuickTime, which has a screen recording tool in it. Often people who use Macs didn't know that was there, and it's kind of a, wow, check that out. If your students can create screencasts, now that will likely become your best tool for summative assessments, given how easy it is to cheat with something like fact recall or multiple choice in online settings. So getting them to be able to say, all right, here's what I know about this, and you've told them what they need to be able to describe and explain when they make short 45-second or 60-second videos on how to on explaining what it is they know as a part of your content. Using this crisis as a way to move toward higher level assessments may mean you will get more out of your students for years to come. Get comfortable with the video conferencing tools. So there are a lot of these: Zoom, Skype, Google Meet, even phone apps. My go-to is Zoom because it's easy to set up and invite people to. The screen sharing is simple, and you can record sessions. There are also some easy to use controls, such as muting or even removing participants, and view switching between a focus on the speaker and a gallery of all involved. This will also be what you need to brainstorm with other teachers, the support people you work with, your leadership, and others. This may also be your best way to be social if you too end up in shelter in residence. So finally, contact a colleague to connect and share an idea. The sooner you start the creative brainstorming, the better it will be for you and for your students. Keep your community vibrant by actively reaching out to others. Don't simply wait to be told what to do. This is a time for exploration, and getting into that space will make what you do all the easier. Essentially, this is about stories, stories of learning. We all engage in trying to convey things in such a way that it's compelling to our learners. And now that we have shifted and will be doing this via online tools for some period of time, it's still our job. How can we do this in such a way that we can inspire the kids to see inside themselves possibilities that they may have never seen before? This is an opportunity that we have. I know that it's a hassle. I know that it's stressful. I know that you might even be working harder than you did when you were at school. But it is also an opportunity to help a kid see a new path. And so as you look at these different pieces, try things out. Do things like go to YouTube, right? There are all kinds of explanations for how to use different tools on YouTube. If there's something you're trying to get up to speed on, look and see what's available by just adding the name of the tool and the magic word tutorial, and then choosing the short ones to see if they can explain it to you well. Make sure that they were posted more recently. A video about a tech tool that's 2 years old may well be out of date. And the Hush Hush 007 James Bond tip on this front is that if you like a tutorial video you see, then what you do is click on the name of the person who posted it and see if there are other tutorials that person has posted that could be useful to you. So I know that we may have questions. I'm very happy with Lindsay to answer anything you may have. Feel free to start tossing things into the chat. This afternoon at 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock Central Time, I'll be doing a webinar called Activities Across Grade Levels for Digital Learning. So we'll look at 2 major activities and how they might look for the littles and for upper elementary and for middle and high school. And I'd love to have you join me for that. That's free, but you do need to register. I'll get that link in the chat very, very soon. Lindsay, it's yours.
All right, I was just going to give a minute for people if they wanted to throw questions in the chat, and I was looking at our form again. A couple new questions have come in. One of which, Rushton, is how can you be certain students are completing their own work? And also, other than coding online, what are some good independent activities that students can do?
So good questions. So first of all, let's look at the independent piece. If you are trying to do assessment the way you've done it before, through just having people, for example, answer questions in a form or anything like that, you're a long way from being able to verify that it's just their work. The only way that I would say that's really, really strong is to have conversations individually with kids. So, the idea is, for example, with Zoom, to be able to say, all right, when it's your turn, then you're going to step up and I'm going to talk to you and ask you what you know and then talk through that. And whatever it is that you teach, that may be the way to do the most reliable checking of what they particularly know. There was a second question in there as well. What,
other than coding, are some good activities for students to complete independently at home? So I'm assuming kind of activities that are no prep for teachers, but are reliable sources that kids can go on and navigate their way through.
Go look at the things that a number of organizations, museums are offering, things like this. The Cleveland Zoo, for example, I need to find some of these links and toss these in here. The Cleveland Zoo does a really good job of connecting with their community, and they are doing daily virtual field trips on Facebook Live starting at noon, maybe Eastern time, I think it is. I'm not sure, but I will search that out as soon as I as soon as Lindsay starts talking.
Sure. We also have one of our chapter leaders in Central Illinois who has created a calendar with all of those live events already linked in there. So not just the Cincinnati Zoo, but also she has things for like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 12, 1, 2, drawing with Mo Willems, and different virtual field trips to like go visit the sharks. So she's tried to curate everything that's live and free, which I think is great because then you can kind of plan your day and you can have purposeful breaks with your kids and share that out so people not only attend it live, but they can also watch it later on. So they don't have to be there live asking the questions, but they can go back to it at another time as well. So I can share that resource as well once I get it.
Good deal. As I earlier, I would put the links to this afternoon's webinars in. So let me add that to the chat.
Perfect.
And you will also find at that page the guidance webinar that we recorded last week. So that may be useful in thinking through some of these pieces as you go.
There was another question in the chat that said, what is the best way to train teachers on how to utilize online teaching tools such as Zoom, Screencastify, etc. remotely? Do you have any advice on that?
So what I have found is that I connect with a teacher. Like if a teacher doesn't already know, for example, how to do Zoom, then we'll connect via phone. We'll trade emails. I'll say, call me at this number at this time. They will. I'll say, okay, here's what I want you to do. And we already have them set up with an account, which is certainly helpful in our case. But I'll get them on, get them to start one themselves, to look at some of the tools, how to switch between gallery view and speaker view, for example, and how to manage participants. There's not loads. And one of the strong things about a good tool is that you're not looking at an aircraft cockpit with, 1,000 different things in front of you. That's one of the reasons I like Adobe Spark as well. As you think about coming back to the question a minute ago about assessment, if a student at almost any level is able to get pictures of something, so it could be drawings that a parent has taken pictures of and helped by putting into Spark. A high schooler could be taking pictures of several things and linking them and describing connections between them and things that they have studied up to that point. You can imagine finding pictures online, that you use and connect to pictures that you've provided that relate to content you taught, weeks or months ago, and their job is to come up with creative connections. They can have discussions on those things in, say, Google Classroom. But I'm getting away from the how do you get the teachers up to speed on it? It's taking one-to-one. It really is. And then, but I always make sure that after I finish talking to one of the teachers, I'll say, who are you in touch with? Have you talked to other members of your department about this? Can you reach out to them? And at that point, they'll say things like, oh yeah, like Jack actually is doing crazy cool stuff along these lines. And that's good for me to know as I talk to more people at the school. But it also means I'm working more and more to try to get them talking with each other. If this is one-to-one, this is going to take forever. If this is a network, we'll get there.
I'd also recommend doing lunch and learns with your teachers. So we go to lunch, when we're in school together. So why not just have lunch on a Zoom for practice? Exactly. So practice on the Zoom or the Google Hangout or the Flipgrid or whatever you're planning to learn. If you have to be on the phone at the same time too, just try it together so it doesn't feel as intimidating, and do it at a time where you're having lunch. Don't try and do an activity with it. Because first you want to learn how to utilize it and then embed it in a meaningful way. So those are some options as well. There was another really great question from Michelle. She asked, what is a realistic expectation for an elementary teacher who teaches all content areas to complete in an e-learning day? I know this is vague, but any advice would be appreciated. For me, my advice is don't try to recreate everything you're already doing. There isn't any set guidelines that says, anybody has to be doing X amount of hours of work at home during these e-learning days. It's meant to just build off of purposeful and teachable moments. So if you can craft something around a science idea or a math idea that would be easily implemented and enrich your students' lives, then that's what you should do. You will not be able to do more than 50% of what you normally do. It's just not possible, nor is it going to be purposeful for your students.
I'll jump in there and say that Casey Bell of Shake Up Learning did an interview with Jennifer Pearson last week. This is a teacher who was with an international school, I believe, in China, and she put down, I think 12, 15 things that she thought were really important for elementary teachers to think through. Added that link to the chat moments ago. By the way, everybody, remember that in the chat, if you are looking at the chat, there's 3 little dots, towards the bottom, where you can click and save the chat. So all of these links that we're giving you, you can save them that way. Additionally, Amber, put a note in saying, remember that there are webinars being planned for next week with Apple, Google, and Microsoft. Just watch your inboxes for that. I think as somebody who has been to ISTE affiliate stuff all over the country, IDEA is one of the most vibrant in terms of lots and lots of possibilities for people. You can tell if you've been to one of the conferences, if you haven't, why not, right? So you need to come to these things and see what kind of really cool, really kind of cool idea sharing happens. I think that's just a really important piece. Yeah.
So those webinars on Monday will actually be hosting through that particular account. So our Microsoft webinar will be in Microsoft Teams, so you can learn about the tools if you're a Microsoft district within the tool. Same for Google, it'll be in a Google Hangout. We're still working on Apple because FaceTime doesn't allow for screen sharing. So we might be in a Zoom and then just screen share, but it's going to be on accessibility features and reaching every learner no matter what they're capable of, because a lot of these tools do have accessibility features that even teachers aren't aware of. So how do we turn on closed captioning? How do we ensure that it's purposely differentiated for maybe the students that have the IEPs or the 504 plans that their parents don't really know where to go or what to look for? So that's kind of our theme for Monday's chat. We have experts from Microsoft, Google, and Apple that will be leading those so that we can give some advice and some strategies to people who really need to help learners that have different abilities. So make sure you mark that on your calendar as well. Let's see.
Any advice for related service providers such as SLPs or OTs? I'll let you handle that alphabet soup right there.
Oh, okay. So I did just reach out to a couple of my occupational therapist friends, and they have provided some resources, which we've also hosted on our website. And I think the point is to create purposeful breaks for students for every 30 minutes. So if you are an OT or a specialist of some sort, posting those opportunities for brain breaks that you think would be really easily integrated in the day. So whether it's you going live or having a bank of ideas, again, it could be a Google Doc where you just list out some ways that students can take that break that they so badly need, and yet it's purposeful and still working towards their goals.
Also, and especially for school leaders and team leaders, grade level leaders, department leaders, understand that when the school is sending out messages and videos to people, get as many different people as possible involved in that. Kids want to know that the nice person at the cafeteria who gives them food is okay. And having that person say, hey guys, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again. Here's a reminder about healthy eating, right? That person can give an important message. The janitors can give important messages. The bus drivers can give important messages. Tap the talents of your entire team. You'll find that there are loads of people who have a thought to share, and that short thought might be exactly the thing that some kids needs to go from to no, we'll make it, right? So tap the talents of your entire team.
And if it's frustrating or overwhelming for you to plan it, think of how it feels to actually do that work. So try and keep it fun and light at times. Kids are at home, so think about what pets they might have that they'd want to incorporate in their homework. Again, we're not just teaching the academics anymore, nor were we ever, but we have to think about the whole child. We have to think about everything that's going on in the world and how it's impacting them, and what we can do to alleviate the stress that might be invisible because we're not in the same room with them anymore.
I would add that one of the things about this is that in a lot of schools, we're locked into a highly unproductive mode of, we're all supposed to like know everything all the time. So we never ask others for help with stuff, because if you don't know it, then somehow you're a loser, right? Please, now is so the time to ditch that, right? Personally and professionally, being a teacher is so much more satisfying when you can turn to people and say, hey, I tried this, totally bombed. What, but I think it might, be better if we tried, have you done, those kinds of conversations are really, really valuable for feeling good about who you are as an educator. I shameless plug, I wrote books. And as you think about what it is you do, little things make you better. Little things make you better. If you think about improving as a teacher as some huge thing because you have to spend thousands of dollars, getting a degree, but look, little things make you better. Learning to ask questions in different ways, learning to look for things that you haven't learned to look for, asking feedback from kids about things that maybe you haven't asked about before. There are so many things that can make you a better teacher, shared in moments, right?
Yes.
And matter of fact, to continue the shameless plugging, I'll put a link to my book, Making Your Teaching Something Special. And if anybody reads it and you're kind of like, wow, I have questions, just email me. I mean, I'm happy to connect with you and help you out.
That's awesome. Thank you for offering to do that. I totally agree with you too. I mean, sometimes it just feels like we're in this silo and we have to know all the answers, and we really have to reach out and see that other people are going through everything that we're experiencing. So why not, be in this together? It just makes sense.
Absolutely. All right. For those of you who are kind of in a space of like, I need some reading. Well, here you go.
There you go. Well, but that's true. And now's the time to also make sure you take care of yourself, as you said, Rushton. So, continuing your education is important. So go after that passion project that you're working towards. Sometimes we need to be a learner again to know how those learners are feeling. We're also at IDEA offering a ton of opportunities for professional development as well online. We have some design thinking courses that we've been creating. I think now is a great time to kind of flip the way that we think about teaching learners. So we've partnered with FitSpace and Book Creator and Night Zookeeper, and we're going to create experiences for you teachers to be able to continue your education as well. So don't forget that you also are continuing to learn as well through this.
All right. I will put that webinar registration link in the chat one more time as well. I'd love to see, plenty of Illinois folk join us at 3 o'clock or at 6 o'clock, kind of whichever works for you. But thanks again.
Yep. And don't forget about our Night Zookeeper workshop that is coming, our webinar that's coming up next week. And then this Friday, we can continue the conversation about next steps for next week with our questions from the quarantine Q&A session. So thank you, guys, everybody.
There was one more question. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, one more question.
Oh, there was one more question that came in 2:17 p.m. from Michelle. If schools are shut down for the remainder of the year, what are school leaders, educators doing to ensure that students are meeting learning standards targets for the last quarter of the school year?
Well, I think at this point where we've been taking it week by week, I'm not sure if anybody has a plan in place for the rest of the year. So I have a big question. Rushton, do you have any thoughts?
Well, out here in California, our governor has put forward a request for a waiver from state testing. Like this we tend to all believe, yes, that data has something to say, but this is not the time, given the other things that are far more important in terms of just trying to keep kids healthy and oriented to their learning. So I would say that you're asking an important question, but it's not nearly as important a question as what are you doing right now to figure out what each of your kids needs right now, and work with your colleagues to answer those questions, because if you can do that right, you'll get to the other end of this whenever it is and be all right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rushton, for joining us today. I can stick around for a few more minutes, but I know you have a prior engagement. So thank you, everybody, for hopping on today, and good luck with everything. Remember, we're here to support you.
Take care. Thanks.
If you're looking
Thank
for
you.
your PDHs, I did put the link in the chat window as well. So go ahead, click that link for your PDH.